Thank you so much for being here today. I'm really excited to be speaking with all of you. My name is Shaina Koimarkar, and I will be conducting this webinar. So this session is presented to you by FACTS, which is an organization that helps foreign-trained physical therapists understand education pathways, credentialing, and licensure in the US. Before we begin, I just want to say if you're feeling confused or overwhelmed about what to do after BPT, that's completely normal. I was in the exact same position not very long ago. So today I'm going to break down few things very clearly and practically so you can make the best decision for yourself. I'll also keep the last 5 to 10 minutes for questions, so feel free to note anything you want to ask. And feel free to drop down your questions in the chat as we proceed with the webinar, and our FACTS team members will be answering your questions during the webinar. Okay, so this webinar is basically for foreign-trained PTs who are planning to study in the US, students who have recently completed the bachelor's, PTs who are confused between DPT, TDPT, and master's options, and anyone who is exploring exercise science, kinesiology, or physiology, and those who want to eventually become licensed PTs in the US. So if that sounds like you, then this session is definitely going to help. A little bit about me. So I completed my Bachelor of Physical Therapy in India, and I wanted to explore higher education in the United States. And eventually, I chose Master's in Exercise Science, which is a STEM program, and we'll get into that when we go further in the webinar. And currently, I'm studying at University at Buffalo. Now, let's understand the PT education in the US. So in other countries, usually you complete your bachelor's, do your internship, and then you can start practicing. It usually takes about 4.5 years to do your Bachelor of Physical Therapy. But in the US, students first complete a 3 to 4 year undergraduate degree, and then they apply to a Doctor of Physical Therapy program. An important point to note here is that there is no master's in physical therapy in the US anymore. So as international PTs, we have to plan differently. Now, here are some options that you have after doing your bachelor's. So you have DPT, which is Doctor of Physical Therapy, TDPT, which is Transitional Doctor of Physical Therapy, and master's programs like Exercise Science, Kinesiology, or Exercise Physiology. And each of these have very different implications, and we will be breaking them down later in the webinar. So here's why I think you should not choose DPT. DPT is an excellent degree, but for international PTs, it may not always be the best option. First, we are very overqualified. DPT is an entry-level degree. And second, it is very expensive, often over $100,000 or $120,000. And third, it takes about 3 years to complete. So a lot of content overlaps with what we've already studied in bachelor's. So you're investing a lot of time and money and just to repeat the similar type of education that you already have. Now, TDPT is designed for already licensed PTs. It is shorter, more affordable, and often online, but for international students, there are challenges. The pros can be that it can be a virtual or a hybrid program, and it is less expensive than DPT. But here's why TDPT may not be the right fit for you. TDPT is designed for already licensed PTs. But most universities don't give the F1 visa, which is the student visa, and the OPT, which is the optional practical training, and it is only 1 year compared to master's in the US, where you get 1 year of OPT and also apply for a 2-year extension. So with a master's, you can get a 3-year total of work visa, whereas with your TDPT, you can only get about a year of work visa. And there are also no internship options when you're doing TDPT. So even though it looks good academically, it's not often a practical choice for everyone who wants to work in the US. Now, master's degrees are very easy, shorter duration, about 1.5 to 2 years. They're more affordable than DPT, and many programs are STEM designated and allows international students to study in the US, and it gives time to work towards the licensure pathway. Now, for those who don't know what a STEM degree is, STEM degree is basically an academic program in science, technology, engineering, mathematics to prepare students for technical careers. So With a STEM OPT, what this means for you is that you get 3 years of work visa. This means there is more time to experience, work, and prepare for licensure, and it is highly flexible. Now, those who are wondering which masters you should choose, exercise science, I would say, is a very broad and flexible field. There are three main masters that you can do as a physical therapist. Usually, people go for exercise science, kinesiology, and exercise physiology, but exercise science is more broad. Anyone who wants to do PT rehab or they want flexibility, want a more broader understanding of the area, they can obviously go for exercise science. Kinesiology is a bit more niche. There is movement and mechanics, and it is also for people who want PT rehab and movement analysis. And exercise physiology is for those who want to study more about the internal body responses, like your cardio, your metabolism, and it is very important for any clinical practice that you want to do or you want to do hospital research. Exercise science is a more broader field, and if you're unsure of which program to choose, definitely I would suggest go for exercise science because it keeps your options open. So when I was researching and looking for universities to apply to, at this stage, I scheduled a call with FACTS. I was a client myself, and I took the FACTS consultation call where they explained different pathways for international PTs, how credentialing works, how the licensing pathway works in the US, and this gave me much more clarity. When you're researching universities, a thing to remember is that do your own research for sure. Don't rely on AI to tell you because it can be very wrong. You can go on certain websites for masters in the US and make sure that the information is authentic. This process does take more time than using ChatGPT or any other AI, but it is definitely worth it because it can make mistakes. It can sometimes give you the wrong information. And with the amount of that time that this whole process takes, you cannot afford to lose more time working according to the wrong information given by AI. So always go on every university's website and email the point of contact for that university and be in the text chain with them, ask questions, learn about the application process. They usually reply very early and the information they give you is very accurate. So don't lose time because of AI. When you're researching for universities, there are two main options. You can either go for private universities or public universities. So private universities usually have a higher tuition and they sometimes do offer scholarship, but if budget is an issue, definitely go for public universities. They have lower tuition, they're well recognized, and you obviously get a very good education in the US. So even with scholarships, private universities often cost more than public universities. So if your budget is important, go for public universities. So that should be your main choice. For the application process, when you're going for masters, they usually require these few things. Your statement of purpose, which is SOP. So make sure your statement of purpose is true to you. Don't use AI because they have AI detectors. Again, your statement of purpose should include everything about you, your journey, why you want to come to the US, why you want to study in that specific university, and just kind of explain everything you want to do with your skills, what you learned in your home country, and make sure you make different SOPs for different universities because that is very important. Another thing you need is letters of recommendation. Usually, all application processes require 2 to 3 letters of recommendation, and they should come from someone you have worked with before. It can be someone you worked with in a clinic or during your internship, and make sure it's on the letterhead of the university or the college that you went to or the clinics, and then make sure that you send it to the university which you're applying to in the US. Another thing they need is English proficiency test. So usually they require IELTS or TOEFL, but we'll go into that deep after this slide. You also need your academic transcripts. So make sure you go to your university and get your transcripts in. they should be sent to the university in the US by the university which you studied in your home country. And it is always helpful to have a resume or a CV. Also, another thing I would tell you is apply to only 3 to 4 universities instead of too many. What most people do is they apply to 7 or 8 universities, and the process is already very time consuming. You have to do different applications for every university, and it's going to be very time consuming. Every application also costs about $150 to $200. So you have to be mindful of where you're applying to. So I would suggest prioritize and research and choose the best 3, 4 universities you can find. Look at the programs of each university, research and see if you like the topics, the classes that they teach you, because 2 universities teaching or having the class of exercise science can have 2 different classes and curriculum. So make sure you are applying to university which you like and which you think you can do. For English proficiency, a lot of universities in the US require your proficiency of English, especially if you're coming from a country which does not speak English on the national level, or if your medium of instruction is not in English. So most universities require proof of English proficiency like IELTS and TOEFL, like I said. You may choose IELTS because it allows you to keep your options open for US, Canada, UK, or Australia. But an important thing to note is that many states in the US have stopped accepting IELTS, so TOEFL is recommended. And if you also want to work in the US and do the credentialing process after your master's, then most of the states require your TOEFL proficiency. So I would recommend going for TOEFL instead of IELTS. Now, another thing you need is transcripts, like I said, and documents. Make sure you have them sent by the university. And if you have just graduated and you're applying to universities in the US, you do not have the transcripts yet, ask the university you're applying to if they can give you an extension, because that happens, and that is something I also did. Another important thing is immunization requirements. So after an admit to an university, they require health records such as the MMR vaccine, TB test, and other required immunizations. These records must be valid within 1 year. So I would recommend start early, make sure that all of your vaccinations are in place. If you have not taken a vaccine for tetanus or any other vaccines that they require, make sure you start early so that you do not have to do it last minute. And if you want to obviously get a PT license, then you have to give the NPTE. And the process usually is credential evaluation for your foreign degree, meeting state-specific requirements, taking the NPTE, which is the National Physical Therapy exam, and applying for the state PT license. And if you want more information on this, definitely go for a FRAX consultation, and we can guide you step by step through this process. Many international students work toward this when they're studying or after their graduation, but I would recommend start after you start with your master's in the US. Some common mistakes to avoid would be to applying to too many universities, like I said, not checking if the degree is a STEM degree because you won't get the 3 years of work visa, relying only on AI, and not contacting the universities directly. It is a long process, but definitely email the universities directly, and don't wait too long to start the process because it does take a significant amount of time. If you want to apply for fall semester, then you have to start applying to the universities in October of the previous year. So that takes about 10 to 12 months just to get all of this process done. So definitely start early. And the final advice would be to do your careful research, strategic planning, and have patience, because this is a process, it's not a race, and always should choose the path that fits your goal, finances, and timeline. Thank you so much for attending this webinar. If you need any help, you can connect with the facts through our website, Instagram, or consultations. And now I would like to open the floor for any questions that you guys have. I'm just going to leave this on and I'm happy to help. Nish, please find my education qualifications, BPT. Oh, the can be very specific. Two batchmates from the same college can get different deficiencies, and you can only compare it with someone else. You with how to go about that way step by step. So, all right, any other questions?
I have a question for you, Shaina.
Yes. Hi. Am I
If
speaking with?
if somebody needed a consultation with fax, if they were wondering how to best connect, what should they do?
So if you want to connect with Facts, definitely you can go on our website, factspt.org. You can sign up for a consultation and we can talk to you, help you out in every way possible. We also have our Instagram and you can directly message us on Instagram and we can talk and maybe you can sign up for a consultation and just try to help you that way.
If somebody has a BPT from India, master's degree, everything, and they also have a PT full licensure in Canada, what should be the steps for getting that approval for the US? What should they be doing?
I think the first step that they should do is start with the credentialing process. So submit all of your transcripts to FCCPT, evaluate your bachelor's degree, your master's degree, which you had from India, and then also the degree you had in Canada, and then your evaluation will tell you exactly what you need to do to get licensed in the US. Choose a state that you like and just go for it. And we're always there to help you along the way.
Now, what happens if that person has some educational deficiencies? What should they do then if they apply everything and they hear back from the FCCPT and they have some deficiencies that they have to get credits for? What should be this process for then?
So when you get your deficiencies, the first thing I would suggest is go for FACTS post eval. So FACTS gives you the exact list of the courses you need to take to cover those deficits. They give you the most affordable choices and the options, and then you have full support on email as well. And then after you complete your credentialing process and the deficits are completed, you can send it for reevaluation, and then you can obviously get licensed after you cover all of your deficits. And FACTS also gives you discounts on most of the universities that they suggest, so definitely a good option.
Awesome, good to know. We do have some questions in the chat. So, is it possible to transfer a syllabus and transcripts from WES to True Merit instead of from the college from India?
I don't think so, but I would have to go deep into that. Jane, if you could help me out with that, please.
I would say they usually require the transcripts to come directly from your home country and from the university, especially FCCPT. They're really particular about that.
Right, because even when I did my credential evaluation, I had to send it from my university. So that is the pathway I took. Um, I think it's a good idea to talk to your college about it.
Is
You
there
know,
anything, is
so
there any truth to there being an actual easy state or an easier state to go through? Is that a real thing or just a myth?
So most of the states look for equivalency and not uh, like there is not an easy process for any state. Every state has different application processes. Some require the TOEFL, the English proficiency tests. Some require the jurisprudence exam. Some don't, but it differs a lot. But everyone looks for equivalency. So as long as you're applying to a state that you like, I think you should be fine. All right, Erica, if you're a citizen in foreign train and have deficiencies, what is the best degree to pursue for license in Florida? Would a TDPT be a good choice? So if you are foreign trained, now it depends on you because you're a citizen, you can also work in other areas that you want. You don't necessarily require the OPT, so you can go for TDPT and directly start practicing as a PT. But especially for those who are not citizens, I think TDPT is not a good idea in that case, but for you, I think it would be a good choice. All right. I think if everyone is done with their questions, I think we should be all set. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining this webinar and taking out the time to join in and listen. I hope everyone figures it out. And if you haven't yet, FACTS is here for you. And everyone, have a good day.